Hey kiddo, it is April 2nd. I really missed my chance to do an April 1st video and do an April Fool's. Put that in the time capsule, but I didn't. Instead, I am filming something that I ended up hitting the stop on the video button accidentally while walking a couple weeks ago, and ended up just talking to myself for like 10 minutes, which probably isn't anything new at all. And I was gonna put my thoughts about ChatGPT and GPT-4, and I'm even curious if that stuff will make any sense many years from now. But I've been thinking about it, and I just wanted to leave some thoughts. And there's a lot of sensationalism going on and downplaying, and I don't think I even want to actually speak to any of that. I just wanted to say some of the things that I was thinking about and see how they age. The first thing, or I should say one of the first things that I thought of when I had heard about GPT-4 and ChatGPT is that I remembered when I was it might have been in second grade, we used to watch films in class, and they would bring out the film projector and put the little reel of film on one end of it, spool it through the film projector, and play it. And it was a nice break from our classes and learning things. And we got to watch Disney movies, and one of them was the Paul Bunyan Disney movie. And I don't actually remember it very well, but I do remember one part of it. I remember there was a competition between Paul Bunyan, his big giant man, superhero type man, and his blue ox. I don't remember what the blue ox was called. And against this steam engine. I remember it being called the steam engine. Maybe that's not what it was called, but they were both, the steam engine was designed to chop down forests, and it was designed to outproduce Paul Bunyan. And Paul Bunyan had done all these heroic feats, and he was this heroic person, and he's the hero of the people, and he's a good guy. And so I was, given all the stories I was fed, I just assumed, oh, Paul Bunyan's gonna win, and he didn't. The technology won. I don't think it won by very much, but I just remember being sort of aghast that the good guy lost. I thought the heroes were always supposed to win. And it's just, that's just always stuck with me. You don't always win. And technology does come along, and often it is better. Maybe not much better, but it is better. And frankly, who wants to chop down trees by hand? Now, we'll get back to that statement, because there's a lot to be said for work and the value of work. But to have to chop down trees by hand, perhaps, is something to think about. And the second thing I actually thought about, or have been thinking about, is there's this section of Neal Stephenson's novel, Cryptonomicon, when it's talking, the novel takes place in different timelines. I don't know if I should call it different timelines, but different points of time throughout history. And one of them's back in World War II. And just like with the Paul Bunyan story, I might misquote this a little bit. I'm not really trying to quote it. I'm just paraphrasing that. It was the first time that it occurred to me that there were people who had a job, and their job was to be a computer. When I grew up, they were still using the term digital computer. I just didn't think anything of it. I just went through my life, digital computer became computer, and that was it. That was what happened. And in the book, Neal Stephenson describes that just like there used to be people who copied manuscripts and copied books, and they were the printers, so to speak, there were people who did computations. Frankly, I don't remember everything they were doing, but I'm just assuming roomfuls of people who were doing math equations and checking out statistics and making sure things were accurate, and probably handing it off to somebody else, and then that other person would take a look at it and make sure that they double check their work and make sure it's right, make sure it makes sense, which you'd have to do because humans are error prone. And it was just amazing to me that in my lifetime, the digital computer name was still applied to digital computers, and then subsequently disappeared, and how long that took. Obviously, I wasn't around when there were still computers, but I just, it just made me think of that. And now we have ChatGPT. We have what appears to be, I'm trying to make sense of it, because probably this is as big of a deal as a calculator, as big of a deal as a printing press, as big of a deal as the internet. And I don't know. Without making predictions about what's going to happen to humanity, whether we're all doomed or we're all saved, I have no idea. I think if we're all doomed or all saved anyway, I think it's us and not the AI. It's going to be either our beautiful, harmonious getting together and finally playing nice with each other, or it's going to be, us doing each other in. But let's just leave that aside for a second. I think that the most interesting part of this revolution, and perhaps why people are scared, is I just have this gut feel that this is going to flip the power structure. In my lifetime, I saw, although I think the transition was actually happening before my lifetime started, I saw a transition though to sort of fully who had the power were what I've always called the Urkels of the world. When I grew up, there was this show called, I think it was called Family Matters. There was this super nerd on the show, and he was really smart, and he was actually really cool, and he ended up becoming the star of the show. And it wasn't cool to be a nerd when I was a kid, but during this show, this kid who really was a super nerd ended up becoming the star and even the hero, and he was very likable. And really, as I grew up, I realized it was better to be a nerd than it was to be a jock. And I say better in the way of it seemed like there was more upward mobility. Not that I actually think one is really better than the other. But what's happened, I think, is the nerds have become like everybody else and have pretty much misused their power. I'm not saying that I want to get rid of technology, but I think usually when people get entrenched in their, us and them groupings, and one group is better than, quote, better than the other, that it's difficult not to be lured in by the desire to oppress and not basically share power with other people. And so in my job, when people talk about, oh my gosh, probably software engineering is over, I actually think it might be. I actually think for the first time we've invented something that's going to turn my profession on its head, and really good riddance. I cannot see a world where people who are actually creating something, who are actually designing something, is ever going to disappear. Again, I could be wrong, but I think there's something to people who work. In many ways, I feel like AI will re-level the playing field and make it so that people who are more inclined to do work, like blue-collar workers, will have more power, like tremendous more power. Why should someone have to go to college to have access to creative knowledge? Why should someone who is, potentially defending their life in the judicial system not have access to all the precedents available? Why should people who really need to have a probabilistic check on what type of surgery they should do? Now, I'm sort of projecting here into the future that if AI keeps progressing, it'll start to be able to make these probabilistic guesses like this. Why should they not have access to that? Maybe there are reasons they shouldn't, but I'm not the person who would actually ever argue against them having access to this type of knowledge. So, to my job, to the, what feels like 95% of my job, which is being someone else's janitor, what I feel is oftentimes doing what I've often joked is blue-collar work in a white-collar world, and, helping other people make money. Good riddance. I think what's going to fall out of this is, people like me, if this AI thing keeps going forward, and I sound like an old man when I say that, but that's how I feel right now. It's an interesting thing to be alive, where really this was never going to be possible in my lifetime, and now it is. Wherever direction this goes, I'm the sort of person who will try to use the tool to make something better with it. I think there's a lot of people who are going to do that. I also feel like this is the sort of tool that will have me put up or shut up about all of the complaints I've ever had about bad guidance or bad leadership or bad design, because this might finally be the tool where I could leverage it to create content, to create the sort of products that I want to create, but I could be the creator and I could outsource, the so-called product genius to the tool, the AI tool. I hope some of that was coherent, at least. It's clearly something I've been thinking about. And I also think that same goes for product people who really have, I'm just thinking in terms of the software world right now, and I think it's a very limited view, but it's the view I swim in every day. It's the lake I swim in every day, so to speak, the water I swim in. So it's just very present in my mind, especially since it's Sunday evening as I'm walking around, and Monday's right around the corner. I think, there's a lot of really smart but not so technical people out there who could use AI to finally build something that's really ingenious. And, because they were probably never going to be technical, maybe they can. Maybe they have a disability that prevents them from really wrangling code, and which is really awful to do anyway. You'd think in 2023, we'd have some better programming languages and better ability to program. It's still a very painful process. And so maybe artificial intelligence and the ability to regurgitate text that has been regurgitated way too many times, just like the computers of old used to do, we could finally regurgitate it reliably. We might see things that we would have never seen before. That's what I'm hoping. I think at the end of the day, though, there's only one thing that to me has ever been really certain in life. Yeah, it's one of the few certainties that I've run into and experienced myself. No matter what, every problem you solve will invent a new problem. You don't have to try very hard. You don't have to look. It'll just be there. Sometimes the problems have been there all the time. We could just never pay attention to them. And sometimes the problems are new problems. But there will never be a lack of problems for humans to solve if that's what you want to do. And maybe, if I keep being optimistic about this, ChatGPT and other AI will finally humble us, because I think us humans playing too many of the zero-sum games we play have been not too nice to each other. And if we had something that was actually competition to us on the planet, or we just viewed it as competition, maybe it would humble us. Or maybe it'll be the messiah we've all, as a group at least, seem to, unfortunately, in the year of our Lord 2023, still seem to want to exist and have it come save us. I'm just rambling. I love you, kiddo. I'm gonna finish my walk, and I'm thinking of you. And we're gonna bicycle together tomorrow, so I'll see you tomorrow morning. Hope you have had a great weekend, and I love you. I'll see you soon.